And welcome back to the Horse Racing Show. It is time now for our Rood and Riddle Vet Check, which I always enjoy because I learned something, and I know that you're going to learn something too. And we have Dr. Raul Bras, who is with us now, who is the only person I know personally who is in the International Equestrian Veterinarian Hall of Fame, which is a big deal. Doctor, thank you for being with us.
I appreciate it. It might be a big deal for you, but I like to always stay humble and try to be as everybody else. I'm just trying to help out horses. That's all.
And I've noticed that with all veterinarians. I really have not met a vet that has a major ego where you go, he or she was tough to talk to, because it's about the horses.
Yes, and I have always said too that this industry, it treats you with a humble pie all the time. Every time that you think you know it all, you realize that you actually don't know as much as you thought you did. That's the thing about veterinary medicine.
And describing my life as well.
Yes.
That's just the way it is with me.
Yeah.
Dr. Bras, I want to ask you about, I guess your specialty is laminitis. That'd be fair to say?
Yeah, I mean, I specialize in foot-related lameness, which is podiatry. And obviously laminitis will be a big part of that part of the field.
And the feet, as with any human athlete, even if you're not a great athlete, if you go out there and jog or walk a mile or two a day, you got a sore foot, that's really painful. I can't even imagine when you're carrying 1,100 pounds like a racehorse is around the track, what it does for them when they have a hoof problem.
Yeah, and to top it off, it's like I always say, there's no foot, no horse. I'll give you a couple of examples. If you talked about lameness, they say that at least 80% of your lameness is going to be foot-related. You use the comparison of the horse. I mean, the human. It's even worse than that, because the horse is actually standing on the last digit. So it's basically standing on your fingernails almost. So that will be a comparison of how to use, the horse's feet. The cuffing bone will be your last phalanx on your finger. And then if you want to compare it a little bit more, your nail will be the hoof capsule of that horse. So they're very, very, very prone to have issues related to their feet.
And the most serious of these is laminitis, which can be and oftentimes is fatal. So what exactly is laminitis?
So laminitis, and I'm glad that you asked that, because there's a lot of confusion when it comes into it. Itis in veterinary medicine is basically inflammation. So the hoof, the internal structures, if to try to simplify things, the bone, the cuffing bone, or the last phalanx, or the distal phalanx, or the third phalanx, is actually attached to the hoof caps or to the hoof by the lamina. So when the horse has some sort of kind of inflammation of that lamina, that's laminitis. Doesn't mean that the horse has some sort of kind of displacement or rotation, or in other words, people call them sinking, where they actually sink within their hoof capsule. That's when people start referring to the word of foundering. My horse founder. And I try to differentiate that a little bit, because when the horse is going through laminitis, doesn't mean that he has already had some sort of kind of displacement or rotation. He's basically in the early stages of that disease, which eventually becomes more of a biomechanical failure. You start with the primary cause, which it might be some sort of kind of disease on the horse that targets the feet, the lamina has some sort of kind of inflammation, and that breaks the bond between the hoof and the bone, and then due to the weight and the biomechanics and all those kind of ground reaction forces, the movement, the horse is prone to have some sort of kind of separation from the hoof and have some displacement. It's extremely painful.
Can that be true? Can you get it? Can you get ahead of it and try to cure it? Most cases, I know it gets to the point by the time it's discovered, it's incurable. In a few of the racehorses I've covered that have died from laminitis.
Yeah, and I'm glad that you're saying that, because that's my goal as a veterinarian. Unfortunately, we have not been able to prevent it, but right now we're in the stages that the damage assessment it's the priority or the most important factor when you start approaching those horses, because when it comes into veterinary medicine, you want to be conservative. You want to just do what's necessary. With laminitis, if you're better off being more proactive than reactive. You don't want to wait until you start seeing obvious changes, because by then you're far behind, and it's really, really hard to catch up with those horses. So yeah, my goal is to actually catch it early enough that I can have a forecast of the things that can happen, so I start working on those before they do happen.
I'm talking with Dr. Raul Bras from the Rood and Riddle Clinic, and how do you catch up with it before it happens? I mean, what is being proactive with that? Is there, I guess, is there a sign that a horse, and it happens mostly, I think, with stallions, doesn't it? When they're not on the track, obviously, they're out in the field and in the breeding shed. I believe that'd be correct, isn't it? That's where you hear most of the laminitis cases.
Yes.
How do you have an idea that he just isn't looking quite right? That somebody from the farm will call you and say, something's wrong. I believe, will you come and take a look? I mean, can you get that far out to be proactive?
You could, and with education, we have come a long way with a lot of owners and farm managers and horse people are starting to be more aware of it. And we always have to keep asking ourselves, is it's a secondary cause due by some sort of kind of disease. Let's say the horse if sick, let's just put it like that, if it has some fever, or it has some diarrhea, or have some pneumonia, or it went through colic surgery, or anything that will cause some sort of kind of toxic effect or grain overload, there's different pathways that will create laminitis. But you start noticing that. You start noticing that the horse suddenly starts shifting more weight. If you start checking their digital pulses on their legs close to their feet, you notice that they have increased pulses. Some people like to touch the hoof capsule and see if there's any change in temperature, and they talked about hot feet and hot foot and all those kind of things. And like you said, the horse owners and managers know their horses, so they can tell that the horse is not doing well, and then they call you and say, hey doc, this horse he's not doing right, he's being sick. That's the first thing that kind of throws the red flag. And then they say, he's not really very willing to walk, he's shifting a little bit more weight, or he's laying down more often than he used to. And those are the stages that you really want to jump on it and not wait until you start finding more obvious problems.
I guess, would Secretariat be the most famous case of laminitis, or at least the horse that people that don't follow horse racing would be familiar with that name if you said that was his cause of death?
Yes. And unfortunately, and I was thinking about this, and I have always thought about it, and it was very unfortunate for the horse, but I think it was fortunate to some degree into the industry, because you brought up that to everybody's perspective. The horse that everybody loved, out of the blue, next day is dead and succumbed to laminitis. Because if you go back and look into it, one of the latest videos of him was him running around the paddock. Yeah. And then 2 days later, they let everybody know that they had to put him down due to laminitis.
And it's amazing how quickly it can hit, isn't it? I don't want to get apple-orange comparison, but you hear about like elderly people that get pneumonia and they pass quickly within days when they look great, and 3 days later they're passing. I guess that's how quickly laminitis can hit. For those that don't follow horse racing, you probably have a loved one. Sadly, you may have had to gone through that with someone, and that's how quickly laminitis can go, just like a pneumonia through an older person.
Mm-hmm. That's exactly how it goes. I mean, it can happen overnight. It can happen within hours. Mm-hmm. And if you want to compare it to humans, when you have a systemic disease that actually would attack your organs in humans, it's the same way with horses. It attacks their feet. And due to the architecture of the hoof capsule, their weight, and all those things, you can lose them overnight, even within hours.
Yeah. How did you get involved in all this growing up in Puerto Rico? Were you around horses when you were a kid? Is that how you got involved with the love for horses?
Yes, I can't believe you asked me that, because it's amazing how things happen. I never had any intention to do podiatry. I always wanted to be a veterinarian. I want to be a surgeon. I was born and raised with horses. That's what's common for me. I'm very comfortable around horses. My dad raised and breed Paso Fino horses and show Paso Fino horses, and due to his passion and dedication, he has very high-end brood mares, very high-end stallions, and I used to take care of them. And throughout my whole life, I was dealing with horses that had laminitis, and I have no clue, no idea, and nobody else did in Puerto Rico. So I spent most of my life treating horses that were quite uncomfortable, were laying down, were having abscesses, and we lost a lot of horses, and I treated horses for a long time. And then I went to vet school. They don't, at this point, they still don't teach too much about podiatry when it comes into the school. So when I started visiting Rood and Riddle, one of my mentors, Dr. Morrison, used to call for help late at night, and I used to hold horses for him.
Yeah.
And he was treating horses with laminitis, and it just kind of that light bulb just went on, and I was like, wow, I've been doing this my whole life. This has been my passion. So I did it backwards, because a lot of the people that do what I do now, which is, part podiatry, which is a veterinarian and a farrier, they were farriers before, and then they eventually became veterinarians. I did it backwards. I became a veterinarian, and then I realized that my whole life I had a passion for helping horses that were going through this. So I decided to go through the path of becoming a farrier as well, and then putting both together.
That's a great story.
Yeah, it still gets me, because I spent my whole life dealing with these horses, and we never had a clue. And when I got to the States and started seeing how things were happening, that just changed my life. I wanted to be a surgeon, and my brother, I have a twin brother, he's a surgeon. And when I realized what kind of lifestyle they were gonna have, I decided I didn't want to live like that when they're on call all the time.
A little busy, aren't they?
Yes.
Not that you aren't. You ever go to the movies? Do you get a chance to go see a movie?
Yes, I do. I try to go to the movies with my family, with my kids.
You like a horse racing movie in particular? One that's like a favorite of yours?
Well, I mean, you mentioned Secretariat, and you can't deny that movie. Obviously, everybody wants to know what happened. Everybody wants to be that part of that history.
Yeah.
I mean, he's the horse that put everybody in the map, and put not only the people that were actually in the horse industry, the people outside the horse industry became very they want to be part of it. So I was one of those ones that I was not around that area, and decided I want to watch the movie. I would really want to see what happened and how everything evolved, and it was pretty neat. It was a really good, cool movie.
Doctor, I appreciate your support. When we were talking about doing this show, you were one of the first that said this sounds interesting. Yes. And one of the reasons is seriously to have you and the other vets from Rood and Riddle on, because I think there's a lot of people that like horse racing, even go to races on a regular basis. They don't know all about all the insides and all the workings of what vets do.
Yes.
And obviously, if you guys aren't around, then we don't have horse racing.
Yeah. I mean, everybody has to understand that all we want is the best for the horse. So when it comes to the public, most of the time, only the negative things are the ones that arise. But that's not the case, because everybody that is involved in the industry, all they care is for the well-being of the horse.
Doctor, it's been a pleasure. Come back anytime.
Definitely.
All right. Dr. Raul Bras joining us from Rood and Riddle in our Vet Check this week. Stay with us. We'll have more on the Horse Racing Show. Remember to like us on Facebook, subscribe and like us on the YouTube channel. You can listen to us on your iPad, on Google Play. What else? iTunes. Thank you. Thank you, Tom. iTunes. I just show up, I talk, I have great guests on. iTunes, yeah, that's another one. And you can go to thehorseracing.com. I think we've got it all covered. We'll cover more when we come right back.